Welcome to episode 185 of the Fierce Calling podcast. I'm your host, Doris Swift. Welcome to the show. So glad to have you joining us this week. My guest is Michele Chynoweth, and she's going to share how her life was just filled with so much heartache and brokenness that it reminded her of the story of Job in the Bible. And she's going to share what God did and how he brought such restoration and redemption and how he does that for our stories too. And she writes intriguing and fascinating modern day suspense novels based on Old Testament stories. So it's quite fascinating. You're going to want to listen in all about it. One of her books is actually going to be in production this fall, a movie production. So it is fabulous. And friend, if you are looking for a speaker for your next women's event, don't forget to check my speaker page out at womenspeakers.com. And I would love to have a chat about encouraging your women. But for now, I know what Michele shares is going to encourage, inspire, and challenge you. So listen in while I have a chat with Michele Chynoweth. What is threatening to steal your joy? What is it that feels so heavy right now that you could barely stand? God has a plan, and his plan is to surrender it. Surrender it to him. It might be a prodigal. It might be a relationship, a marriage, something with your job. So many things. We have so many amazing blessings, but there are so many things in our life that threaten to steal our joy. I'm Doris Swift, author of the award-winning 6-week Bible study, Surrender the Joy Stealers, Rediscover the Jesus Joy in You. And it helps women rediscover the overflowing, ever-present Jesus joy within that fills, empowers, and ripens the fruit that God produces in our lives. Using personal and biblical stories, I share how you can identify your joy stealers, surrender them to God, reawaken the joy within, and share the joy with others. You can do it on your own or with a group. Check it out, friends. Surrender the Joy Stealers. Rediscover the Jesus joy in you. It's available on all the online retailers. It's time to take your joy back. Welcome back to the show. Today I am welcoming one of my friends, Michele Chynoweth. She is an amazing woman, and she loves to share God's word in a very interesting way. And I love her so much. She is such a joy. And I met her in person at a conference, and we just became fast friends right off. She's a best-selling author, an award-winning speaker, and a book coach. So we're going to hear more about that. But also, she writes contemporary fiction based on Old Testament stories. Pretty fascinating, and she has several of them out. And I can't wait to get into this. She's a graduate of Notre Dame. She has a journalism background, so we're going to hear some of her story. Welcome to the show, Michele. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Doris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking with you and just going over your story and sharing, because you have quite an encouraging story of how God has brought you through some things and where you are today. And I think, too, it's encouraging when you're going to share about how you stepped out in faith to do what you're doing right now. So I think we all need to hear that. So I would love if you would share a little about your story and then how you're taking action where your passion, compassion, and conviction intersect.
Sure. I would love to share that. So after I graduated from college at Notre Dame many years ago, won't worry about numbers here. I became a news reporter. It is something that I really wanted to do. Didn't pay much back then. It probably doesn't pay much still. But I just love that investigative part of being a journalist. And it also involved my writing. I actually wanted to be an author at the age of 10. And I always tell people, like, usually something inside you around that age is telling you what you want to be. But then life took hold, and I wanted to be the next Woodward and Bernstein or the next Barbara Walters on TV. So I put all these applications out and got a job at my local hometown paper. It was, 15 minutes from home, and it was a weekly, and I was the investigative reporter on the courts beat and police beat, and the first female to ever cover that category there. And it was exciting. Then I moved up to a daily paper in Salisbury, Maryland, then to another paper at the Baltimore Sun. And then I went to the News Journal, which is the paper for Delaware, the main newspaper. In there, I also did a TV stint. I worked at WMDT TV. And I loved what I was doing, but I felt like I wasn't being creative anymore. Just writing the news stories as they came out. And that calling was still there. I just kept it buried because I had to put food on the table, right? So meanwhile, I'm married and we have 3 children, and then that marriage starts to fall apart. So I got a job in marketing while I'm still married, and that was okay. I mean, it was creative, and I did a little bit of artwork to get the job too. I was always an artist growing up. But that call really started pressing on my heart that I wanted to write the next great American novel. And so I did, and it won first place in the drama category at the Maryland Writers Association contest, fiction contest. And we all lost the 5 of us in the 5 categories lost the prize because 9/11 happened. And the agency, one of the top literary agencies in the country still today, Writers House, was located in New York. And, it's like everything fell apart with a lot of things in the country. And so I was feeling in a really low place of despair. My marriage is starting to crumble. My kids are becoming, and I knew finally that I was going to get divorced. I felt like I was losing my kids who were becoming teenagers and or soon to become teenagers, preteens. And you know how they don't want mom and dad around anymore. I had an ad agency for 20 years at that point. I worked for a large firm in Delaware, and then I was a marketing director, and then I owned my own ad agency. So I was really in marketing for 30 years. And that was crumbling because of the recession at the time. So, and most of all, I was facing addiction to alcoholism. Didn't even know it at the time because I wasn't even familiar with that word, alcoholic. But now when I look back and I realize I had a big problem. And so all of this was happening, and I was driving along feeling just at the bottom. I mean, hitting rock bottom. And I heard a still small voice. I look back now and see it was God, or know it's God, calling me to write a modern day book or novel based on the book of Job in the Old Testament. And I thought, wow, that definitely didn't, that voice was out of nowhere for me. And I thought, I really don't want to write that. I want to write this other, I wrote this action-packed suspense romance that won that prize. I wanted to keep putting that out there, but wasn't meant to be. And finally, after some amount of time, I started writing it. And I realize now, looking back, that was God tapping me on the shoulder because I was just like Job, losing everything. Losing my marriage, losing my health, losing my business, losing my kids, just like Job. And he brought me through that. And I joined a 12-step program, and happy to report today. Recently, actually, I just celebrated 20 years in recovery.
Praise God.
So praise God. And I also remarried a wonderful man who's been so supportive with my career and just with everything. And he had 2 children, so we had to have a blended family of 5 kids and a good relationship with all of them, and now 4 grandkids. They were our wedding party, the 5 kids. They were 12 through 20, and now they're 26 through 33, or about to be. So, life is good, and I, like Job, I got my life back in a richer, fuller way. but I had to take those first steps and step out in the shred of faith I hang onto like Job,
Mhm.
and stop questioning it, and meet God halfway and do the work to finally get it published. And that was before self-publishing even came along. And then a Christian publisher picked it up, and I wrote the next one because they said, "We'd like to do a line of reimagining Bible stories." I said, "I'm your girl."
Hmm.
And started to read the Bible front to back. And I also research each of my books with the Bible story itself in a Bible research. It's called the Anchor Bible series. But yeah, it's funny how life, God steers us in a direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you were sharing about how you were wanting to write this other book, and then God kind of prompted you, and you have this idea that you have no idea about. So, it's not your idea to write that book, based on Job, and then realizing, wait a second, this feels like my story right now. And, going through all of that difficult season in your life, and how God uses those things, like when you had that training in marketing and all of that. And then it was kind of going away, but now it's like in your treasure box, that you have that marketing experience, and he's equipped you with those things that you thought were gone, that you were losing, but you're actually gaining because of the equipping, right?
I look back now on the whole journey so far, more to come,
Mm-hmm.
and I see how it all meant to happen. I talked to a small church group, and then a small women's group on my next book, The Peacemaker. And I actually had somebody come up to me, and because at the time I was still, finding my way new in recovery, and
Mm-hmm.
we learned to practice humility in the 12-step program. And was very prideful at first, so that took a while. I was like, how are these going to make me rich and famous? Well, that wasn't God's plan. He was like, you need to make a difference, like touch people's hearts. So somebody actually came up to me after speaking to this small church group and said, "I decided to go back to church after reading your book." Still brings tears.
Wow.
Um, the Peacemaker, based on David and Abigail, who became King David's second wife, um, after she was married to a narcissistic, abusive husband, Nabal, who I don't want to give any spoiler alerts, but
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it's all modern day, and she's a reporter herself in that book. So little pieces of me find their way in. It's not autobiographical or a memoir at all. They're all contemporary fiction
Mm-hmm.
with they're all modern day. And anyway, after speaking, a young lady came up to me and took me by the hand after I spoke on that book and said, "I think I'm married to the same guy you used to be married to. Can we talk?" And I realized after several speaking engagements that my books didn't just help me get through some of my stuff, but helped other people too. And it's funny you mentioned about the marketing. So, yes, I can, we authors need to market our books
Mm-hmm.
no matter how they're published. And now I help my book coaching clients market their books as well.
That is beautiful. And it's just so precious when you can see the fruit of what your books are doing in the lives of others. Because sometimes you may not hear something, but then God gives you like this gift and this encouragement to show, see, this is how I'm using these books for my glory and the good of other people, and for yourself too, because it is therapeutic when you're going through writing a book, and kind of like fleshing stuff out. It's not always easy to do
Yeah.
that, but I love that they were giving you that feedback, and it's just affirmation and confirmation that you are walking in what God has called you to do. So that's really special. What was the first book that you wrote that was based on Job?
That one is the faithful one.
Mm.
And my first book, it has since been republished again with a new cover, which I like better.
Mm.
And then The Peacemaker was my second book.
Mm-hmm.
Then I wrote one based on the story of Jonah. Everybody thinks it's about being swallowed by a whale, but what's the real message?
Mm.
That some try to rescue other people, God rescues us in the process. And I was still doubting, like, was this my calling? Was this my genre? And then I did a Bible study on Jonah, and I realized, yes, it's about like getting God's message out there. And each story has its own message. And so I just, that's when it grabbed me that this is my calling. And the
Mhm.
next one was based on Cain and Abel, loosely based, I say, on my two sons, who have that sibling rivalry. And it's a murder mystery. Okay, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but most of us know the story of Cain and Abel, but we
Mhm.
don't know how and why. And it's told from the point of view in the beginning, from Eve's point of view,
Mm.
to lose, well, two sons, but then she gains a son. So you're right, nothing's lost. And um, oh, the next one is The Wise Man, based on the story of Solomon. And it came out right as Roe v. Wade was being overturned. Actually,
Mhm.
the leak had come out.
That is amazing.
Two women are fighting over a baby born live out of a failed late term abortion. They can
Mm.
survive. There's been several cases, and the Christian worker who saves the baby and the birth mother comes back in later and they fight over custody. So it was a very headline, ripped from the headlines type
Mhm.
of book that I got out there. But back to Nothing Lost. So that next great American novel that won the fiction prize and then 9/11 happened. I am taking that and forming that into a new novel. So I believe it's going to be the next one out.
Mhm.
So I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Wow. And it's really like not easy to write fiction. I think some people think it's just, you write a story, but there's so many facets to fiction versus like nonfiction. Oftentimes we're writing a personal story or we're sharing parts of a biblical story and they definitely has a message, but it's really cool how fiction also has a message and can draw people closer to Christ through just reading and learning more about God, even if it's not, because even the book of Esther doesn't really mention God, but his providence is all over that book. So I love how you do
Right.
that. How do you sit down and work on what you're going to write? Like, how do you flesh that out when you're preparing to start a new novel?
Well, I usually let the idea comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Genre came to me. My whole purpose and calling came to me, like not the other way around. So I usually just think something up and realize God's saying, write this.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I start to write an outline. I am a firm believer in writing a chapter outline for those out there. I think we need to be plotters and pantsers, writing by the seat of our pants. So, as a
Mm-hmm.
book coach, and I teach a master class on all of this and individually coach writers, but it's like a roadmap. So if you know the beginning, the middle, and the end,
Mm-hmm.
you can start breaking, all those subplots come in and you write it, chapter by chapter. And that way, if life happens, which it always usually does, and you have to walk away for a
Mm-hmm.
week or a month or even longer, uh, that you can come back and pick right up on chapter 9 if you left up off on chapter 8 because your roadmap's there. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer in that. And I have to say, I also have to do research, even though it's like, oh, you're just rewriting stories out of the Bible. No, like my books,
Mm-hmm.
unlike I think that of any others, actually do follow the Old Testament stories. And the reason I pick Old Testament, I've been told, suggested, oh, you should write on Mary Magdalene. Yes, she's a great character study, but
Mm-hmm.
or great saint to write about, but I feel like the New Testament is much easier to read.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those Old Testament stories, like Job, for example, the whole plot happens in one paragraph and then it goes on between his friends. And I have that too, where they debate, but the story's more well rounded and also today. So, uh, but I research it so that it stays true with the Anchor Bible series and the clergyman. So
Mhm.
um, I've had a variety of priests and ministers and pastors review the book to validate its authenticity. On
Mhm.
top of that, for example, the jealous son on Cain and Abel, I had them Eve be basically she eats from the tree of life where she sins and she causes Adam to sin, and they are banished. So they are. I have them in native Navajo land. So out in Arizona, Utah, there's a they have their own government and everything. Well, they're very private people, Native Americans. They don't
Mhm.
like to be photographed. They didn't want. I had friends who knew them. Still, it was a rough road, and I finally got the PR director from Dene College, which is a Navajo college, and he authenticated it. So, and then I've had like I have an FBI element to the Runaway Prophet. The Jonah character is working with his dad on his deathbed, who calls him to go out to the new Nineveh, Las Vegas, Sin
Mhm.
City, right?
Mhm.
And he goes out there eventually after I won't tell you what the whale is, but after he jumps on that cruise ship, and then, so it follows in a modern day way.
Mhm.
But I had to talk to an FBI agent. I had to talk to, well, let's just say a submarine captain.
Mhm.
I had to talk to various people in those lines of work to authenticate it because I can't be in all lines of work, right?
Right.
I actually had a sensitivity reader read the one for the wise man because he marries a woman from China, and she's like atheist and he's Christian, and those two religions come together explosively. And what would their cultures, what would their parents, what would their families say to this?
Mhm.
And he authenticated all of that. So it's a lot of work writing a novel, but if you dream of doing that or a nonfiction book,
Mhm.
you just have to follow your heart and your passion. You have to be passionate because life will happen. And sometimes publishers or marketing people, sometimes it doesn't go the way you planned,
Mhm.
but it always goes the way God planned.
Yeah. It's cool in a way too because you do all this research. So you get a chance to talk to all these different people and find out these fascinating facts. But we can appreciate as readers that we can trust that you have authenticated the stories and not just like, because there are even movies, we might see that'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that way? And so it's good to have that to where you have that backup of someone in that field who is an expert in that field to, you know, be able to give you the ins and outs of it or read something and say, well, I don't know that this would happen this way. Maybe you could, like, do they give you ideas? Like they consult with you and say, I wouldn't say it this way. Maybe try it this way or,
This is a cultural element that you need to add in, or that
yeah.
type of thing. I mean, the book of Jonah in the Bible is what, 4.5 pages long? So
Hmm.
my novel's 300 pages long. So
Yes.
tell the story, but
Yeah.
and also make it modern day so it is believable, totally believable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is cool because it's fiction, but it's believable because it's
Right.
based on, and it's like based on true story, so, and you have to get that straight.
A lot of stuff happens in the Bible. So my
Mm-hmm.
books are, and sometimes, history repeats itself, but there are issues in there like addiction, domestic violence,
Mm-hmm.
and mental health issues, and just a variety, right to life versus right of choice, and
Mm-hmm.
just a whole lot of modern day issues in there
Mm-hmm.
that the characters are dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, it makes it believable. People can relate to it, and it kind of helps them feel more connected to the story. Because I like, when it's a good story, you just get connected with all the characters in the book and everything. So that's fantastic. And I thank you for sharing earlier about the struggles and the difficult seasons that you did go through, because sometimes, it's really hard to be vulnerable. But then when we realize that God is using those things to help other people and to say, this is where I was, but I didn't stay there. God didn't let me stay there. He brought me through it, and He gave me the desires of my heart because you were 10 years old wanting to be an author, and here you are with all these books under your belt already and have more to come. So that is very exciting. So what have you found to be the most rewarding thing about this journey?
I would say meeting people like you and others that have just encouraged me. We encourage each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
When sometimes you can be down. I used to compare myself and it used to be, looking around, well, she's selling more books at her table. What am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Normal doubts and anxiety that we sometimes have. But the good thing about being a Christian writer in particular is you do have this Christian family of sisters and brothers to hold you up and
Yeah.
support you. And it's not competition anymore. We don't have to act like that. It's more like we're all building the kingdom. So
Mm-hmm.
it's once I made that crossover, it was like a lightning bolt went off because I realized stay in your lane,
Uh-huh.
and it's almost like I had to get out of my own way. And now my books are doing great. Um, Talking about a movie.
Ooh, congratulations. That's very exciting.
So I can say at this point,
Uh-huh.
but that's the future. Um, Writing the next one,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, over the years, I've again been a book coach with an online master class that happened out of COVID. I was teaching at a college,
Mm-hmm.
our local college, how to write, edit, publish, and market a book, and then went online with the college. And
Mm-hmm.
then I said, you know what? These writers need more than just classes. They need in between one-on-one coaching where I help them move along to actually finish the book.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have an 8-week course, but it happens soon, and to guide them with editing and feedback, because you and I have both taken workshops where it's like, oh, that's interesting, a workshop on marketing or the craft of writing,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it needs to be more comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I just developed my own course online, and yeah, that's been a reward and blessing too. Um, Sometimes I get antsy because I'm like, I want to write, and it's been 4 years since my last book came out, but
Mm-hmm.
I've come to look at that too as being God given. I was
Mm-hmm.
in a marketing director job, not with authors, and big corporate firm after I owned my own ad agency. And I just felt like my heart wasn't in it, my soul wasn't in it. And I realized that's because you love helping writers just like you that have asked you, how did you get there? How did you get that award? How did you finish your book? How did you
Mm-hmm.
publish it? And all the rest. So, yeah, that's been rewarding too.
Yeah. And you're working in your wheelhouse and you're operating in your gifts because you are obviously a teacher, have the gift of teaching. You write and you want to impart this wisdom that you've learned on someone else because even someone listening right now, they might not feel like they can, maybe they don't necessarily have the gift of teaching, but there's something in their life that they've accomplished that they are actually a step ahead of someone behind them that would like to do the same thing, but they just aren't sure how. And we sometimes take it for granted the things that we already know that we could actually use to help other people. So it's good. It's good that you brought that up and that you have a heart for that, where
You
you
might be
help.
surprised. I would probably not be surprised, but you might on how many listeners have a book in them,
Yeah.
because it's like once you free them to say, I could possibly do this,
Mm-hmm.
and any writer can. I mean, we're not born talented, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn the craft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all they need is that encouragement and that teaching with any field. You're right. But if you have poems that you've written or devotionals or anything, children's books,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just step out in faith, get the right help, and then go for it.
Yeah. Because it is a pretty high statistic. I'm not sure exactly the statistic. I've heard it before, but how many people actually would love to write a book? There's tons of people who would love to write a book. They feel like they have a book. And sometimes, like you said, it's like they just need to hone their craft. They need to learn, because we do need to study and do things with excellence. It's not necessarily like we'll be perfect, but doing things with excellence as unto the Lord, and especially if he's called us to do it. And what is our actual, like, what is the intention? Like, what is behind the reason why we want to do what we want to do? And I think earlier you kind of touched on that. And I think it was good that you brought that up, because if we're going after, in anything that we do, if we're going after any kind of notoriety or awards or winning, it's fantastic to win awards, because as a Christian writer, then it exposes the book to more people who will hear the message. So there's such a big difference between what is really the intent behind why I want to do what I want to do. And if we're doing it for the right reasons, there'll be fruit. But if we're doing it for the wrong reasons, I think God will help redirect us and shake us up a little bit, like you were saying earlier, the thing about pride, because that can be pretty sneaky. We may not realize we're dealing with a pride issue, and then God, like, oh, okay, you kind of face it and go, wait a second. This seems like pride.
Yeah, or envy. That's another one.
Yeah.
So I would encourage your listeners, whatever their path,
Mm-hmm.
journey, and whatever to find their purpose and their passion, you're bound to win, bound to succeed. I mean, we all win in the end, right? And don't worry that maybe it's been done before. Nothing new under the sun, it says in Ecclesiastes by
Mm.
Solomon. However, every book I read as an editor, as a book coach, is unique. And
Mm-hmm.
so if it's coming from you individually with your unique calling, it's going to be unique and hit a unique audience.
Nice. And as an editor, you go through and you have different ways that you edit. Like, you can line edit, you can edit for content. So could you explain a little bit about that, how you go about in doing that, Michele?
Yes. So there are three areas of editing: content edit, like you said, having being an author yourself, and then line editing, which is like line by line. A content edit looks at the whole story, the whole book, that it makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
that it moves along, if it's chronologically, that way, or that it has a flow, a beginning, middle, and end. That it has a climax if it's fiction. You'd be surprised how many books don't. And I'm like, okay, we need to set that up or build suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if it's nonfiction, has a contents that make sense in it, and you don't veer off the path of the main topic. And so that's a content edit. And I usually give an editor's report. It's about 10 pages that addresses all the areas for you individually. Then a line edit is line by line editing. You do it in track changes. We take a Word document and just, you see all those red line edits, and then you get to make your own edits and changes and send it back, rewrites. And then there's a proofreading, which is the very last pair of eyes on it that um, again reads it line by line, but at
Mm-hmm.
that point you only expect like grammar and punctuation corrections and that type of thing. And once it gets to the final draft, then it's up to you how you want to publish it. And I offer assistance with self-publishing now on Amazon and Ingram Spark, Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark. And I have a small team. I have two artists that work with me to do the covers. It's like I've been asked so many times as a coach that I said, well, I can help you. And then that kind of snowballed. Not a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
but an assistant to helping you publish.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that and explaining how the different editing processes work. And because I really love too that you offer where you would read the content. And I guess as an editor, you can also see, well, wait a minute, did we not tie this up? That, you left this story hanging and we don't know, and it might be like a subplot or something. where you haven't answered a question, and you wouldn't want your reader to get to the end and go, yeah, but what about that? What happened with that? I don't understand.
Right.
You know, and it's frustrating.
You might need a timeline because you
Mm-hmm.
need to, if the mom starts out 35 and the child starts out 5, then they better end up, uh, what, 25 and 55, or, there has to be that,
Uh,
has to
yeah.
make sense. Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of writers, and now with AI,
Mm-hmm.
are starting to just hash out books, just, doing quantity versus quality. And I always say to my marketing clients, I can't put lipstick on a pig because, and they laugh.
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's true that, you have to have a good book to start out, or all the marketing and all the money you throw at it in the world isn't going to make it successful in the long run, because readers know
Mm-hmm.
they're really hep on everything. So, I mean, they can tell. And so you want to make sure you do your homework,
Mm-hmm.
and, and then when the marketing comes in, and I'm also a marketing expert for authors, then you can take it and it'll shine because it's a good story
Yeah.
or it's a good book.
Yeah, and it's a good quality book. People can self-publish whatever, you know, they want. So it is so important to get someone who's professional that can help you through the journey. So the end product is a professionally done book, you know, because it's only going to waste time and money and effort if you don't put the time, money, and effort into the quality, right, of it.
Absolutely.
So when you do this master class, like, is that a course or how does that work?
So it's online.
Mhm.
I'm planning to have one in the fall, September, October. It's 8 weeks. I'll pick a night. Monday nights or Wednesday nights is usually a good night for everybody. And it's an hour and a half long, like live teaching. So, like, we're talking to each other now,
Mhm.
appearing on screen, we would do that. And I usually take no more than 15 students at a time, because
Mhm.
it is intense, and I am working with each one on one.
Mhm.
Um, Classes are usually anywhere between 10 and 15 students, and you actually will write, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in the beginning, you could even be done, or
Mhm.
halfway done, and or near the end, and you need that content edit, you need that, you need some help with publishing and marketing. So I meet you where you are,
Mhm.
but everybody always benefits from being in a class. First, they learn from each other,
Mhm.
uh, because we all can help each other, and people ask questions that you're probably thinking about or haven't even thought about, and then it's like, hey, I need that answer. So,
Mhm.
it's really dynamic. And then we'll have half-hour one-on-ones, on Zoom, and I actually give them homework. It's
Mhm.
your option, but the ones that really do the homework and do the writing are the ones that benefit the most, right? And yeah, we even play some games and have some fun. I mean, we have a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
Well, that's great.
Called Your Book Done Right at yourbookdoneright.com, and you get your book done right.
I love that name. Your book done right. And that's the website, yourbookdoneright.com. Very good.
Yes. RIGHT.
Ah, very good. That is very creative, of course, because you are creative. So I would love this time, if you know this part of the show, if you would share a little bit about how the listener can connect with you, and if there's any last thing that you would love to leave them with, maybe something encouraging in the season that they're in right now.
Sure. Everything's on my website, to start out, and it's my name, my first and last name.com, Michelle with one L,
Mhm.
Chynoweth at CHYNOWETH.com. And all of my social media is on there. But you can just type in my name in Google, and
Mhm.
hopefully I'll fill up the page with all of my different, and hopefully with, probably with your podcasts, different shows I've done. I've been on TV and radio and podcasts, and I so appreciate you and this one. So just, you could type in my name on Google, or go right to my website. And then you can connect with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and all the rest. And if you can get a free copy of your first step, a beginner's guide to writing a book. If you fill your name and email in my on my website, and also I send a monthly newsletter, so you can subscribe to that. And I always include like events that are happening out there that are pertinent, Christian conferences, writers conferences, and such. Yeah, so that my books are sold everywhere, on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the stores, even in Walmart and Target.
Mm.
Um, and let's see what else. You can also purchase them, and I can send you a signed copy through my website, through PayPal. So
Very nice.
all right there, and one-stop shopping. And you can fill out your email, and I'll send you notification about the class coming up.
Nice. So if you are listening right now and you ever thought about writing a book or you're interested in getting more information, I encourage you to check out Michele's site. I'll have the links in the show notes for that. I think you just had the newsletter come out this week, right? Because I was reading about, you were talking about something with God's timing, weren't you?
Yeah. Yes. And as authors, and as I shared,
Mm-hmm.
it was all God's timing. I wanted to rush everything. I wanted to make up for lost time. I wanted to be, you know, at the top of the New York Times bestseller list because I always dream big.
Mm-hmm.
And could be my next book. I have won lots of awards and been on bestseller lists, but yes, it had to do with that, and just follow God's timing. Don't give up. And I always include an inspirational blog post, basically God's word today, or how rediscovering the Bible. It has several hashtags, but it's hashtag inspirations, and it's basically relatable, like my stories, to today's everyday life and what God through His Word is saying to us today.
Very good. That is awesome. And I'll have that again in the show notes so the listener can find you. But I do encourage you to sign up so you can get that free resource that Michele offers, and then get on her newsletter, because then you'll find out about the masterclass and all the other good nuggets that she shares with us for free, because those newsletters are free. They come out right to your inbox. And I thank you for reminding us about the God's timing thing, because sometimes we want to rush things, and if we would just wait, God has something so much better. And oftentimes we have to distinguish between, are we walking away from something because we're being called to lay it down, or are we walking away because we're quitting too soon? So I think you've encouraged us in that.
Well, thank you. And I did have one more, you said, inspirational thought. Before I say that, I also have contests that I give, usually Amazon gift cards. If you happen to read one of my books and can write a review on Amazon, it's super easy. It takes 1 minute. You hit 4 or 5 stars or whatnot, and then you write a sentence or two, and it's that easy. I have often a monthly contest, and I take all the reviews and put them in a hat, and at random pick a name, and you get a $25 Amazon gift card. So
Sweet.
yes, and I'll keep you posted on that. My Bible verse has always been Romans 8:28.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to probably botch it because I didn't call it up. But can I call it up so I don't botch it?
Yes, I love that one.
Right. Here we go. We know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to His purpose.
Amen.
So true.
Yes.
Amen.
What a beautiful scripture to end the show with. So thank you so much, Michele, for being on. It's been a joy and a pleasure having you as a guest and reconnecting with you. And I love all you've shared, and we've certainly gleaned from it and can glean so much more if we connect with you after the show. So thank you. And I'd love to have you back on, because you've got lots happening in the future. So
Okay. Hey, that sounds great. And thank you so much, Doris. This is a wonderful show, and you're a wonderful host.
Oh, God bless you and your ministry and your writing and all that you're doing for God's kingdom. So, friends, thank you for listening today. And again, just remember that every woman of God has a fierce calling, and check out the show notes so you can reach out to Michele, and I would love to hear from you too. So God bless you. And Michele, we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Wasn't that an amazing conversation? And Michele, she just shared so much great stuff. And even if you're not a writer, even if you're not looking to write books, check out her books. I have the links in the show notes as always. And maybe you're interested in her program, Your Book Done Right Masterclass, because a lot of people feel like they have a book in them, but just don't know where to start. So Michele is your gal. She would love to help you with that. So check out her website. And also, friend, as I said earlier in the introduction, I would love to have a chat with you about speaking at your next women's event. And I am currently booking for 2025. But also, I want to mention that sometimes you might have already booked a speaker and that speaker was not able to speak for one reason or another. So reach out to me, because I can come and speak with a short notice, actually. And I can definitely work with you to make sure the message is a good fit for the women for your event. And we can definitely have a chat about that. I would love it. So check out my speaker page, dorisswift.com, and also my profile at womenspeakers.com. And I hope you'll join me next time when I talk with another woman who's taking action where her passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. Until then, friends, have a blessed week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode that is part of the Spark Media Network that can now be heard on the Edify app.